We wait for life to test us, but the Stoic doesn't wait. He trains. Most people live hoping for comfort and fearing discomfort. They pray that adversity doesn't knock, and when it does, they scramble. But the Stoic does the opposite. He steps into discomfort voluntarily. Not because he loves pain, but because he loves freedom. And real freedom begins when you stop avoiding what's hard and start choosing it. Voluntary discomfort is not about suffering for its own sake. It's about preparation. It's about choosing challenge before it chooses you. Because when you've trained your mind to endure the cold, the silence, the hunger, the pressure, you don't panic when life delivers them unexpectedly. You're already familiar with the terrain. This episode is not a call to make your life miserable. It's an invitation to take back control, to stop living on autopilot, to stop chasing softness. Because when you avoid all pain, you also avoid all growth. But when you face difficulty on your terms, when you choose it with purpose, you become something rare, someone the world cannot shake. 1. Choose challenges before they choose you. Most people wait. They wait until life forces them into discomfort, until the storm arrives, until the ground beneath them shakes, and only then, when it's too late to prepare, they begin to wish they were stronger. But the Stoic doesn't wait for adversity. He invites it. He seeks it. Not recklessly, not with drama, but with discipline. He chooses challenges before they choose him, because he knows the world is unpredictable, but his preparation doesn't have to be. The wisdom here is simple. What you choose to endure now, on your own terms, will not break you later when you have no choice. The person who voluntarily steps into cold, into discomfort, into silence, into resistance, doesn't panic when these things arrive unannounced. He's not surprised. He's not soft. He's familiar with the terrain. This is why the Stoic fasts, even when there's food. Why he rises early, even when he doesn't have to. Why he takes the stairs, walks in the rain, holds silence when it's easier to speak. These small, voluntary hardships are not about proving anything to the world. They're about building inner gravity. They're about reminding yourself, I can endure more than I think. We live in a culture that worships comfort. Everything is designed to be easier, faster, softer, more convenient. And while that feels good temporarily, it leaves people fragile. One unexpected event, a job loss, a breakup, a crisis, and their whole world collapses. Not because the event was extraordinary, but because their tolerance for adversity was non-existent. They never trained for it. But the Stoic sees comfort differently. He doesn't avoid it, but he doesn't depend on it. He uses it wisely, but doesn't build himself around it, because he knows that true strength is forged in friction, and the only way to grow familiar with friction is to walk into it with your eyes open. Seneca said, "Set aside a certain number of days during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, 'Is this the condition that I feared?'" This is not a rejection of abundance, it's a test of attachment, because the moment you realize you can live without, you stop being a slave to having more. This doesn't mean becoming extreme, it means becoming intentional, choosing discomfort that sharpens you, that expands your edges, that reveals your weak points so you can strengthen them before they're exposed by crisis. You fast, not to suffer but to understand your hunger. You rise early, not to impress, but to command your time. You face cold, sweat, friction, not to punish your body, but to liberate your will. Because here's the truth, life will challenge you, whether or not you've trained for it. And if you've waited until the challenge arrives to build your resilience, it might be too late. But if you choose the small daily difficulties, if you lean into what's hard now, you'll meet the storm like someone who's already walked through wind, calm, ready, steady. So ask yourself, what hard thing am I avoiding? And better yet, what challenge can I choose today, not to suffer, but to grow? The answers won't be comfortable, but they will make you strong. And that strength? It's not loud, it's not showy, but when the world shakes, you'll be the one who doesn't fall. 2. Discomfort builds mental muscle. You don't get stronger by avoiding weight. You get stronger by carrying it, not all at once, not beyond your limits, but consistently, with intention. And the same is true for the mind. If you protect it from every strain, every challenge, every discomfort, it weakens, slowly, quietly, until one day you find yourself overwhelmed by problems that once would have been trivial. That's why the Stoic embraces discomfort, not because he enjoys it, but because he knows it builds mental muscle. The mind is like any other part of you. It needs resistance to grow. It needs friction. It needs effort. The Stoic doesn't seek a life free of pain. He seeks a life where pain is understood, where it is used, refined, respected, not feared. Every time you push through discomfort, your mind becomes more capable of handling adversity. You train your thoughts the same way you train your body, by showing up, even when it's hard. And discomfort comes in many forms. It's not just physical, it's emotional, it's psychological. It's sitting in silence when your instincts scream for distraction. It's holding your tongue when your ego wants to speak. It's doing the work when no one's watching. It's facing the truth about yourself, even when it stings. These aren't grand gestures, but they are real practice. Seneca once wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body." That's not just poetic, it's practical. It means that every small act of endurance shapes the kind of person you become, not by force, but by repetition. And over time, discomfort becomes less threatening. You stop fearing it. You begin to see it as feedback, as opportunity, as sharpening. But modern life makes this hard. We are surrounded by comfort. Everything is optimized to reduce struggle, and while that's convenient, it's also corrosive, because ease without effort doesn't create peace. It creates fragility. It creates minds that panic under pressure, that break when routines change, that collapse in the face of resistance. But the Stoic builds differently. He welcomes strain in small doses. He doesn't make life harder than it needs to be. He just refuses to make it so easy that he forgets how to carry weight, because he knows that real life will demand it. And when that day comes, he doesn't rely on motivation. He relies on the muscle built from thousands of silent reps, of patience, of discipline, of endurance. You won't see the results overnight. There are no trophies for doing the hard thing quietly, but over time, something shifts. You become less reactive, less dependent, more grounded. When others look for exits, you look for resolve. Not because you're tougher, but because you've trained. So if you want to build mental strength, don't wait for life to throw you into crisis. Create resistance. Seek friction. Choose the action that stretches you, not to break, but to build. Because the mind you train today is the one that will carry you through tomorrow. 3. Fast, sweat, simplify. There's a kind of strength that isn't built by addition, but by subtraction. In a culture that constantly tells you to want more, get more, do more, the Stoic does something different. He steps back. He says no, not out of punishment, but out of purpose. He fasts not because food is bad, but because control is better. He sweats not because he hates comfort, but because he honors effort. He simplifies not because he rejects abundance, but because clarity only emerges when you remove what doesn't matter. Let's start with fasting, not just from food, but from impulse. In modern life, the moment we feel a twinge of discomfort, we reach for sugar, for noise, for distraction. We eat not because we're hungry, but because we're bored, restless, or anxious. But when you fast, even for a short time, you confront that habit. You watch the urge rise, and you choose not to obey it. And in that choice, something powerful happens. You reclaim authorship over your instincts. Fasting isn't just physical, it's philosophical. It's a reminder that you are not a slave to sensation, that you can feel something, hunger, discomfort, frustration, and not be ruled by it. Seneca practiced this often, deliberately eating rough bread and wearing simple clothes. Why? To train the mind to detach from luxury, to remember that value doesn't come from indulgence, but from resilience. He wanted to know, what happens when I strip things away? Am I still strong, still clear, still me? Now consider sweat. Not the glamorous kind, not the fitness as lifestyle kind, but real, honest effort. The Stoic doesn't train for aesthetics. He trains for discipline, for grit, for that primal feeling of doing something difficult, something that makes the body ache and the mind want to quit, and choosing to continue. That is a ritual of willpower, a daily reminder that the path to inner peace is not always paved with stillness. Sometimes it's built in motion, in fatigue, in pain earned through choice. There's something spiritual in sweat. When you sweat with purpose, not in reaction to life, but in preparation for it, you sharpen both body and soul. You learn how to breathe through the burn, how to endure the strain, how to stay present when every part of you wants to escape. And that's not just fitness, that's training for life. Because one day, life will get heavy, and you'll be glad you've practiced carrying weight. And finally, simplicity, perhaps the most difficult of the three, because unlike fasting or sweating, there's no clear effort in simplifying. It's quiet, subtle, internal, but when done with intention, it changes everything. The Stoic simplifies not to live with less, but to live with less noise. He removes the clutter, physical, mental, emotional, not for trend, but for truth. Look around your life. How many things are there just because they were easy to keep? How many decisions do you make out of habit, not meaning? How many distractions are so subtle you don't even see them as distractions anymore? Simplifying is an act of rebellion against chaos. It says, I don't need to be overstimulated to feel alive. I don't need 1,000 options. I just need what's true. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. That's simplicity, cutting through the noise, reducing action to essence. And when you live that way, with fewer impulses, fewer dependencies, fewer layers, your mind begins to clear. You see yourself better. You see your values better. You see where you've been performing and where you've simply been alive. Fasting, sweating, simplifying, these are not ancient rituals. They're modern necessities. In a world that bombards you with more, the Stoic trains you to want less. Not because life should be hard, but because you should be hard to break. And that strength? It's built in the quiet resistance of excess, in the choice to step back, to go without, to embrace the difficult, not because it's glamorous, but because it's real. So ask yourself, when was the last time I went without on purpose? When was the last time I chose effort instead of ease? When was the last time I made space instead of adding more? If the answer is rare, then your training begins now. And the training is simple: fast, sweat, simplify. Do it not to prove anything, but to remember who you are beneath all the noise. 4. Harden yourself with purpose. The world does not ask for your permission before it tests you. It doesn't give you time to prepare. It doesn't wait until you're ready. One day, without warning, the storm arrives. The loss hits. The plan falls apart. And in that moment, the question isn't whether life is hard. It's whether you are. And the Stoic doesn't wait to find out. He chooses to harden himself, not out of bitterness, but out of purpose. There's a difference between being numb and being forged. Stoicism doesn't teach you to ignore pain. It teaches you to engage with it deliberately so that it no longer owns you, to expose yourself in small doses to discomfort so that when real adversity arrives, your foundation doesn't crack. You don't crumble, you don't panic. Because you've been here before, not exactly, but close enough to hold your ground. To harden yourself doesn't mean to become cold. It means to become capable. It means you choose the harder path now, so you're not broken by the harder reality later. You take cold showers. You walk when you could ride. You resist impulses that promise pleasure but deliver weakness, not because you enjoy struggle, but because you understand what's at stake if you don't. Seneca wrote, "A man should be toughened while he is young to all the hardships that he may have to face." This isn't about physical age, it's about readiness. Because if you're constantly chasing comfort, then the moment life removes it, you suffer twice. You suffer from the pain itself and from your lack of resilience. But if you've trained your body to endure the cold, your mind to accept the silence, and your soul to carry the weight of solitude, then you suffer less. Because the pain isn't unfamiliar. It's not a threat. It's part of the training. But let's be clear, hardening yourself doesn't mean becoming rigid. It means becoming resilient. You don't resist reality. You prepare for it. You bend without breaking. You adapt without losing your core. And that kind of strength isn't loud. It's quiet. It's built in the moments when no one is watching. In the early mornings. In the last reps. In the silence of saying no when yes would be easier. Hardened by purpose means you remember why you're doing this. You don't seek discomfort for the sake of pain. You seek it for the sake of clarity, of strength, of depth. Because you've chosen to live deliberately, not just float, not just survive, but shape yourself, moment by moment, into someone who can carry not just your own life, but the weight of others too. This shows up in the way you walk through stress, in how you respond when plans fall apart, in how you breathe when conflict arises, not with panic, not with blame, but with calm, because you've trained in the quiet. You've learned to suffer small, so you don't collapse when the suffering grows large. So ask yourself, am I building softness or strength? Am I drifting into comfort, or choosing conditions that sharpen me? The world will not give you an easy path. But the Stoic doesn't expect one. He doesn't need ease. Because he's trained for the opposite. And that training? It's not about pain. It's about becoming someone life can't easily shake. 5. Soft living weakens resolve. Comfort is seductive. It whispers promises of ease, pleasure, and peace, and at first, it delivers. The bed is warm, the food is rich, the distractions are endless. But there's a hidden cost. The longer you stay in that softness, the more your inner edge dulls. And one day when life gets hard, as it always does, you'll realize something terrifying. You've forgotten how to fight. That's why the Stoic resists soft living. Not out of guilt, not out of shame, but because he knows that over time, comfort becomes a cage. Soft living doesn't happen all at once. It begins in small decisions, skipping the workout, delaying the hard conversation, choosing comfort over courage, avoiding the task that challenges you in favor of the one that soothes you. These decisions don't feel dangerous in the moment, but they compound. And the person you become after years of avoiding discomfort is fragile, even if your life looks full. We've been told that a good life is a comfortable one, that the goal is more ease, more luxury, more convenience. But look closely. Are people really happier this way? Or are they more anxious, more dependent, more easily broken by the smallest stress? The truth is, when life is too soft, you become soft, not gentle, but fragile. And the Stoic wants nothing to do with fragility, because fragility breaks under pressure. Strength bends, adapts, grows, and strength is only built through resistance. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, yet he trained himself in discipline and denial. Why? Because he knew that power means nothing if the soul behind it is weak. He wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but never beginning to live." And soft living, a life built only on comfort, is not living. It's surviving, it's numbing, it's drifting. A strong life requires sharpness, a clear mind, a ready body, a spirit trained in friction. That doesn't mean you reject joy. It means you earn it. You delay gratification. You make room for the difficult. You create conditions that force your will to grow. And the man who chooses challenge on his own terms is the man who doesn't collapse when it arrives on someone else's. Soft living also weakens discipline. It tells you you deserve a break, even when you haven't earned it. It tells you just this once won't hurt. It convinces you that rest is more important than movement, that indulgence is harmless, that you'll fix it later. And slowly, it robs you of your drive, your edge, your ability to push when you don't feel like it. But the Stoic doesn't wait for motivation. He trains for momentum. He doesn't live for ease. He lives for alignment. He doesn't avoid pain. He transforms it into power. That's why he builds systems. Morning discipline, cold exposure, fasting, silence, simplicity. These are not random habits. They're defenses against the decay of resolve. And in a world that tells you comfort is the goal, choosing resistance becomes an act of rebellion. So ask yourself, am I living too soft? Am I choosing ease at the expense of my edge? Because every time you reach for comfort, you're making a trade. And if you're not careful, the price will be your strength. But you can take it back, right now. One hard choice at a time, one honest action, one decision to stop numbing and start training. Because comfort may feel good, but only discomfort builds the kind of person who can carry a meaningful life. 6. Control begins with self-denial. Everyone wants control over their time, their emotions, their life, but few are willing to earn it, because real control doesn't come from mastering the world. It comes from mastering yourself. And that mastery doesn't begin with motivation or willpower. It begins with self-denial, the ability to say no, not because you have to, but because you choose to. Because you know that freedom isn't the ability to have everything, it's the discipline to choose what truly matters. The Stoic trains this every day. He denies himself the easy indulgence, the shortcut, the quick comfort, not out of guilt, but out of clarity. Because each time you resist a craving, a distraction, an unnecessary luxury, you reclaim a piece of yourself. You strengthen your command center. You prove, in action, that you are not a servant to impulse, that you are not ruled by appetite, but by alignment. This isn't about extreme asceticism. It's about reclaiming your edge, about sharpening the blade of your willpower, because the mind, just like the body, softens without resistance. If you always say yes to what feels good now, you will always say no to what serves you long term. But when you train in self-denial, when you choose the hard over the easy, the useful over the comfortable, the quiet over the impulsive, you become dangerous in the best way possible. Seneca said, "No man is free who is a slave to his passions." And that slavery doesn't look dramatic. It shows up in small habits: scrolling instead of thinking, eating when you're not hungry, buying things you don't need, avoiding silence because it forces you to face yourself. These aren't sins, they're signs. They show you where your inner command has eroded. And the Stoic sees those moments not with shame, but with opportunity. Each is a chance to reclaim authority. The beauty of self-denial is that it creates space between urge and action, between thought and reaction, and in that space, your power lives. The ability to choose your next move, not from reflex, but from principle. That's what the Stoic trains for. Not perfection, but presence. To be fully there in the moment when most people have already surrendered to impulse. And here's what most don't realize. Every act of self-denial, no matter how small, builds identity. Saying no to a second helping, to gossip, to snooze, to the excuse. These are not restrictions. They are refinements. Each one shapes the kind of person you are becoming. Not someone who resists life, but someone who leads it, quietly, deliberately, without apology. And when crisis comes, when pressure builds, when temptation rises, you won't need to find your strength. It will already be there. Because you didn't borrow discipline from inspiration, you built it from practice. So the next time something calls for your attention, your appetite, your time, pause. Don't answer automatically. Ask yourself, is this aligned with who I'm trying to become? Or is it just easy? And then act. Not from impulse, not from fear of missing out, but from clarity. Because control, the kind that matters, begins not with domination, but with denial. 7. Experience what you fear. Fear, when left unchallenged, grows in the dark. It becomes louder, sharper, more controlling, not because the threat is real, but because your distance from it allows imagination to fill the gap. The Stoic refuses to let that happen. He doesn't run from fear. He walks into it, slowly, deliberately, consciously, because he knows the only way to diminish fear's power is to face it, to experience what you fear, not in theory, but in practice. We often believe fear is a signal to turn back. That discomfort is a warning, and unease is a threat. But the Stoic redefines that. To him, fear is information, not a command. It shows you where your edge lives, where your growth is waiting, where your freedom is still being held hostage by an old story, an old wound, or an old limitation. And the only way to dissolve that hold is to go there. This doesn't mean diving recklessly into danger. It means approaching your fears with curiosity and intention. Afraid of judgment? Speak your truth in a room full of silence. Afraid of failure? Try something where success isn't guaranteed. Afraid of being alone? Sit in it, breathe through it, and discover what part of you has been outsourcing your peace. Because what's on the other side of fear is often clarity, the realization that what you feared wasn't as permanent or powerful as you believed, that you can survive it, that your nervous system doesn't explode when you feel anxious, it recalibrates, that your soul doesn't shatter when you're misunderstood, it solidifies, and that strength, It doesn't come from avoidance. It comes from exposure, repetition, and reflection. Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality, and nothing makes that more obvious than experiencing the thing you've been afraid of and realizing you can endure it." The Stoic trains this not occasionally, but consistently. He places himself in situations that test him, walking into discomfort on purpose, choosing challenge when comfort is available, not because he wants to suffer, but because he wants to see clearly. And nothing clears the fog of fear faster than reality. Modern life makes fear easy to avoid. You can hide behind screens, stay within routines, explain your way out of anything. But avoidance doesn't bring peace. It just delays confrontation. And the longer you delay, the more fear grows. Not in truth, but in scale. A conversation becomes terrifying. A risk becomes catastrophic. And your world shrinks. But when you face what you fear, your world expands. Not because fear disappears, but because you change. You build evidence. You accumulate proof that you are stronger than you thought, that you can act in spite of discomfort. That fear is not a wall. It's a door. And the key is your willingness to walk through it. So ask yourself, what am I still afraid to experience? What do I keep putting off, not because I can't do it, but because I've never truly tried? Then make a plan, small, measurable, intentional, and step into it. Not for punishment, but for liberation. Because once you've experienced the thing you feared, it can no longer own you, and the person who is no longer owned by fear is truly free. 8. Growth demands discomfort. There is no transformation without tension, no growth without resistance, no evolution of the self that happens in perfect ease. And yet, most people chase comfort like it's the reward. They want the results without the struggle, the wisdom without the weight, the breakthrough without the breakdown. But the Stoic knows growth demands discomfort. It requires it. It feeds on it. Because discomfort isn't the enemy, it's the teacher. Think about anything meaningful you've ever done. Anything that made you stronger, wiser, more honest. Did it come wrapped in convenience? Did it arrive when everything felt safe, easy, and predictable? Or did it come after the stretch, the friction, the part of the journey where you weren't sure you'd make it through? The Stoic doesn't romanticize discomfort. He respects it. He understands that every time you feel resistance, you're being presented with a choice. Stay the same or step forward. Remain comfortable and familiar or risk discomfort and grow. And he chooses the path that sharpens him even when it stings, especially when it stings. Growth is uncomfortable because it requires you to leave something behind, an old belief, an outdated identity, a protective habit, a part of yourself that no longer serves you, and loss, even when necessary, hurts. That's why so many people avoid growth. They think it will feel good, but the truth is, it often feels like undoing, like being stripped down before you're rebuilt. But the Stoic embraces that process, because he knows that the pain of growth is not punishment, it's progress. When your muscles ache after effort, you don't panic. You recognize the sign of rebuilding. The same is true for your character, your mindset, your inner strength. If you feel stretched, challenged, uncomfortable, you're in the right place. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." In other words, what you avoid may be exactly what you need. That fear, that doubt, that discomfort. It's not there to block you. It's there to build you. If you step into it, if you stay with it, if you don't run, it becomes your path forward. But growth doesn't demand dramatic suffering. It demands consistency, small, repeated exposure to what's hard, choosing the slightly harder option each day, not because you have to, but because you know that struggle expands capacity. And the person who embraces discomfort calmly, patiently, deliberately becomes capable of carrying more in every part of life. So ask yourself, where am I choosing ease over evolution? Where am I stuck, not because of a lack of opportunity, but because I refuse to be uncomfortable? And then ask the deeper question, who would I become if I leaned into that discomfort instead of avoiding it? You already know the answer, because nothing about real growth is passive. It demands something from you. It asks you to let go of who you were, to step into what you fear, and to trust that on the other side of discomfort is someone stronger, clearer, and more fully you. 9. Do hard things on purpose. Strength is not something you stumble into. It's something you choose again and again, not when it's easy, not when it's convenient, but when it's uncomfortable, when your body resists, when your mind doubts, when every part of you wants to turn back and you walk forward anyway. That's why the Stoic doesn't just wait for challenges. He creates them. He does hard things on purpose, because he knows that voluntary hardship builds a kind of strength that reactive suffering never will. Most people only confront difficulty when they're forced to. A health scare makes them value their body. A betrayal teaches them boundaries. A loss shows them the importance of presence. But the Stoic doesn't wait to learn. He doesn't wait until life humbles him. He humbles himself. He fasts, he trains, he delays comfort, he embraces discipline. Not because life demands it, but because he does. Doing hard things on purpose is a practice of leadership, not over others, but over the self. When you choose the cold shower, the extra rep, the difficult conversation, the silent hour of reflection, you are reminding yourself, I am in control. I do not need ease to function. I do not avoid friction. I grow through it. These are the words the world may never hear you say, but your mind hears them every time you act in alignment. There's power in that, quiet, humble power, the kind that builds identity without noise. Because when you regularly step into discomfort by choice, you're no longer shocked when life hands it to you by force. It's not foreign. It's not frightening. It's familiar. You've trained for this. Your body knows how to push. Your mind knows how to endure. Your character knows how to stand. Seneca understood this when he wrote, "Set aside a certain number of days, during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, so that you may be able to say to yourself, 'Is this the condition that I feared?'" That's not about deprivation. That's about building immunity. A kind of inner armor that makes you more resilient, not because you avoid suffering, but because you've practiced it, refined it, owned it. This isn't about proving something to others. It's not a competition. It's a quiet contract you make with yourself. I will not let comfort make me forget who I'm capable of becoming, because comfort, while soothing, slowly erodes discipline. But hardship, chosen deliberately, renews it, sharpens it, keeps it alive. And here's the paradox. The more you do hard things, the more life opens up. Not because life gets easier, but because you get stronger. You walk with more calm. You speak with more conviction. You face the unexpected with less fear, because you've trained yourself not to flinch. So ask yourself honestly, what hard thing am I avoiding? What challenge could I step into today, not because I have to, but because it would stretch me? Then do it. Not dramatically, not performatively, just quietly, on purpose. Because the person who does hard things by choice becomes the person who can handle anything by necessity. And that kind of person, he's not unbreakable, but he's unafraid. 10. The Stoic trains through trial. To the ordinary mind, hardship is something to avoid, something to pray away, to shield against, to survive. But to the Stoic, it's something else entirely. It's training. Every trial, every setback, every uncomfortable moment is an opportunity to refine the soul. Not to prove strength, but to build it. Because the Stoic doesn't ask for ease. He asks for the kind of challenge that sharpens his judgment, deepens his clarity, and reveals what's real beneath all the noise. This mindset flips everything. Most people wait until life collapses to begin reflecting. They wait for pain before they grow. They wait for loss before they learn. But the Stoic doesn't wait. He uses every moment, especially the difficult ones, as a chance to become better. When things go wrong, he doesn't curse the storm. He trains inside it. He watches his reactions. He tests his values. He observes his impulses. And in that awareness, he builds the kind of character that no comfort ever could. Marcus Aurelius lived this daily. He was emperor of Rome, surrounded by pressure, betrayal, loss. Yet in the midst of that chaos, he wrote to himself, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This is the heart of the Stoic path, using the trial as the tool, taking what was meant to break you and letting it build you instead. But make no mistake, this isn't passive endurance. This is active preparation. The Stoic isn't just waiting for life to test him, he's training now, through discipline, through deliberate discomfort, through small daily resistance that strengthens his ability to face the unknown. He fasts not to suffer, but to remind his body that hunger doesn't control him. He rises early not to impress, but to command the day before it commands him. He walks into silence, solitude, sweat. Not because it's pleasant, but because it's necessary. And when real trials come, illness, betrayal, loss, failure, he's not paralyzed, he's ready, because he's already practiced, not perfectly, but consistently. He's trained in low stakes for the high stakes. He's been building inner armor, not made of arrogance, but of awareness, of a calm mind, a steady spirit, a sharpened sense of what matters. The Stoic knows life isn't fair, but he also knows that fairness isn't the measure of a life, readiness is. You don't get to control what comes next, but you get to control whether you've trained for it. And that training is not in the future. It's in the cold morning, the uncomfortable silence, the hard decision, the moment you choose challenge over comfort, not because it's fun, but because it's forging you. So ask yourself one last time, am I living like someone preparing for real life, or just hiding from it? Am I using the trial to complain, or to train? Because the Stoic's secret isn't that he never feels pain. It's that pain doesn't surprise him anymore. He's trained in it, and that training has made him clearer, stronger, free. Every day offers you a choice. Stay safe, stay soft, stay comfortable, or train. Not for applause, not for ego, but for truth, for strength, for the version of you that isn't just reacting to life, but shaping it. The Stoic doesn't wait for the world to test him. He tests himself, quietly, repeatedly, until adversity feels familiar and fear has nothing left to grip. Voluntary discomfort isn't about punishment. It's about preparation. You expose yourself to the cold so you don't fear it. You sit with silence so noise doesn't own you. You do what's hard on purpose so difficulty doesn't break you. Because what you practice daily becomes who you are under pressure. And if you can hold yourself in discipline when it's optional, you'll hold yourself in strength when it's necessary. So remember this: comfort is tempting, but it doesn't make you ready. And if life throws you into the fire tomorrow, you won't rise to the level of your goals. You'll fall to the level of your training. Train well.